Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today with Mark Lawrence of Covers.com for this Friday, the 15th of November, 2019, on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network at ourlads.com, the king of online football depth charts and college football scouting. And isn't this a great time of year to be a football scout? East-West Shrine game. We're going to have tons of coverage because Dan Shanka from ourlads.com is the head scout and general manager of everything that goes on with the over 100 players that'll be at the East-West. So we'll have extensive coverage of that. And then, of course, the NFL Draft in April. The OFN Today is brought to you in part by Covers.com. Make sure to visit Covers Experts at experts.covers.com. And you can take 50% off any purchase by using the promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. Also, Dave Koken of Covers.com checks in with me every Friday before this show to talk college football on College Football Blitz. That's available on demand as well. And for you college football fans, we're also on the air every Thursday with the editor of Athlon Sports, Mitch Light, to talk college football. But this is the NFL, our one time a week that we get to talk pro sports with Mark Lawrence. And Mark, how'd you think about that game last night?
Well, if I were, you talk about scouting, if I were an MMA scout, I would have had somebody at the Browns game last night and probably signed someone up. From what I saw, as far as the Myles Garrett situation went, unfortunately, that took all the publicity away from the game itself. I thought
Typical.
In the game,
Typical for the Browns, huh?
Well, yeah, the way the season's unfolding for them, and they look like they're building maybe a chance, a little chance or some momentum here, and they completely give that away. If they're going to lose Garrett for the rest of the season, which it looks like, that means they're going to lose their best defensive player, and this black cloud's going to remain over their head. So this probably, for all intents and purposes, was not meant to be the Cleveland Browns year.
Yeah, and that happens. I was saying the other day on my show, if you take a look at the Jet Show, if you take a look at what's going on with the Niners this year, the Atlanta fans wanted to run Shanahan out of town when he was their coordinator the year before they almost won the Super Bowl. And then last year they wanted to run him out of San Francisco, and they wanted to run Saleh, the defensive coordinator, out of San Francisco. Now Saleh's like the hottest coaching assistant on the planet, and Shanahan had an undefeated team going into last week. That's what's great about the NFL. You just don't know from year to year, especially with injuries and things of that nature. It doesn't always work out that way, but you just year to year in the NFL, it's crazy. And maybe next year will be Cleveland's year. I don't know if Freddie Kitchens is still the guy to get the job done, but there's enough talent on that team that anybody could easily see them being a playoff team next year.
Well, for sure they probably will, because this talent they have now is only going to mature, be that much, a little bit more experienced last year. But it's such a copycat league, and the point you make is really good, because there's two coaches that they wanted to run out of the league, and now they're winning, and all of a sudden, they're going to be the prototype of future coaching hires, much like when Sean McVay made his run with the Rams. Everybody wanted to hire these young coaches. That's what we saw last year. It's like whatever's working in the National Football League becomes the patented copyright, and every team has to try and do it. So, like I say, it's a copycat league for sure.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't always work. We're seeing it work in Green Bay, but we're seeing it not work in Cincinnati. So, and to tell you the truth, it ain't working this year in L.A. either, but we'll talk about the Rams a little bit later on. Let's start, first of all, with a game that we both agree on, and that is Houston and Baltimore, the big game of the week. We both like Houston in this game. And, look, I like this game for a couple of reasons. One, I think Houston's a better football team. Not by a lot, but and definitely Baltimore's got the better coaching staff. But I think they're the better team because I think they got the better quarterback. I also think in this situation, Houston, without a doubt, needs the game more than Baltimore does. After this game, Houston's got a Thursday night game with the Colts, followed by a Patriot game. So these are some really big games coming up for Houston. They've covered – interesting. I looked at, of course, as I always do, the magazine, the Playbook magazine, and check this one out. The Texans have covered 4 straight away versus NFC North teams. The Ravens are 1-6 against the spread. the last 7 versus AFC South teams. So if you just believe in those trends, that's another reason to go ahead and take Houston. But there's a few other reasons and trends that also point to Houston. But bottom line is, I think they need the game more, and I just think they're the better team, so I'm going to take them. And I could get almost 2-1 on the money line. Plus 175 is not bad.
No, not when you have a team that's looks like to be playoff bound. To be able to take 2-1 on a money line at any point of the season looks good. Coming into this game here, my focus is going to be against Baltimore, primarily because of what they've done here of late. Lamar Jackson setting these NFL records, a perfect passer rating. He threw another no-hitter last week. And I love fading quarterbacks like that or teams like that after they've done just that. They get a little bit full of themselves, if you will. And then you've got patterns in the game that come to the support of the Houston Texans here. Baltimore 1-11 to the spread when coming off a win against taking on an AFC South opponent. And on the other side of the coin, you've got Houston here 12-1 to the spread in their 5th away game of the season here. I think this is all good news for the Houston Texans in this game. A bounce for the Baltimore Ravens here. I think they're going to come back to the pack a little bit in this game. I'll play Houston plus the points with you.
Yeah, and there's also a John Harbaugh trend that works in the favor of Houston. There's a lot of good trends with John Harbaugh, and when that happens, it's always a good idea to take it. But when you get the rare occurrence when there's a trend against John Harbaugh, which there is, I won't go into it, but it's part of the reason you got to go ahead and spend some money and buy your Playbook.com magazine. We're not going to give everybody all the trends, but it's on there, and Houston's good in that one as well. All right, let's talk about a one we disagree with. It's another big game, New England and Philadelphia. You've made your piece about your feelings on the Patriots this year, and they did lose in their last outing. And look, they lost, 2 straight last year, I think. So it's not that they can't lose 2 in a row. Some people might have that idea that, they lost, so they have to win. That's not the case. I just think they're a better team than Philly. They've had a week to digest the loss. They are 7-1 ATS in their last 8 after a bye. Belichick is 10-0 against the spread as a road favorite after a loss versus an opponent coming off a win. The Patriots, I'm sure there's a little bit of payback here with the Super Bowl rematch and all. First time that these two teams have met since then. They're a 3.5, 4-point favorite. They've moved up to 4 recently in some circuits. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Patriots, but you like the Eagles.
I do like the Eagles, and if a person were to talk about Super Bowl revenge, I think the point that needs to be made is that if you looked at the rosters that they have today, less than half the players that were in that Super Bowl game are on the roster on each side.
Sure.
Including Nick Foles, who quarterbacked the Eagles.
Oh, yeah.
No
which actually I think is an advantage for the Patriots because I'm kind of a Nick Foles guy. I think the Eagles should have kept him.
Well, I think they should have too. High cost insurance, but nonetheless, he gets better as the year wears on. Nick Foles does, and that's the main reason he got activated at Jacksonville.
Yep.
They did the Gardner Minshew test run, but now they need to start winning football games. So, but nonetheless, Philadelphia comes into this football game with that week of rest here, and they've been pretty strong themselves. When you give this football team, the Eagles, a little rest themselves, they're 14-3 straight up, playing with a week of rest in a football game. Now, I know there's the Belichick factor here. He's terrific in games off a loss. He's terrific with revenge. But you combine those two, off a loss and with revenge, he's only 50%. 5-5 to the spread, 6-4 straight up when he has the combination of the two factors working together in the same game. I like Philadelphia. They're getting healthy here. They're going to be as healthy this week as they've been all year long. Their roster is going to be coming into this game. I love the rest factor here. I know New England's got the rest too. But I look for winning teams that are home underdogs with reasons to play the second half of the season. And I see that in the Philadelphia Eagles, who are now tied with Dallas for the top spot in the NFC East.
Yeah, the NFC East could be determined by the Patriots over the next couple of weeks because the Patriots will host Dallas next week. So,
much like the college playoffs can be determined by Auburn in the next couple of weeks when they play, as they are Georgia this week and Alabama in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, there you go. So we'll see. And look, I still feel, even though last week maybe that was the first game that I saw a little bit of a chink in my taking the Cowboys' armor so far this year in losing that game to Minnesota in the way that they did. It's interesting. Prescott, everybody talked about how great of a game Prescott had, but when it really came down to it, on the biggest play of the game, on fourth down, and he makes that throw, and it's like, you're saying this, so what is he doing? It's like it wasn't like he had somebody barreling down on him, and he had no choice but to throw the ball when he did. It's like he just threw the ball, and the guy wasn't even open, and it was fourth down. That's why I'm just not this big. I'm glad the Cowboys haven't given in to his contract demands. If he's asking for over $30 million or whatever the heck he's asking for, and I know the Cowboys are going to give him a lot of money, but I just want this guy to continue to go out there and have to prove it.
I think he's playing an improved brand of football this year. That one play in particular to end the game might not have been his highlight film for sure, but I think he's proving his worth this year, and I think he's going to get close to the money that he wants. There's no way in the world that Jerry Jones is going to let Dak Prescott walk away. No.
All right, games that we agree on. Chicago, the Bears and the Rams on Sunday Night Football, and this is actually a game I really do like. I got the Bears as one of my upset plays this week. Of course, they beat the Rams last year at home as a 3-point dog. We all remember that game. It was cold, and the defense just destroyed Goff, and it was our first sign of this is how you beat the Rams, and it's continued. And last week, we saw it again. And to tell you the truth, I'm starting to get sick and tired of seeing Jared Goff. This guy's a big disappointment. And anytime he's gone up against any sort of defense, and the Bears are not as good as they were last year defensively, but they're still good enough without Brandon Cooks. And I still don't get why they won't run the ball enough. It's like I'm not understanding this thing with Gurley. I mean, it's not like he's got a 2.4 yard average. Feed the ball to him 25 times a game. See what happens. It's like they don't even care. They just want to continue to throw the football and leave the game up to Jared Goff. And this guy cannot get the job done, especially when he goes up against good defenses. The Bears, maybe they've turned a little bit of a corner. Still not a big Trubisky guy, but they got to win. They're desperate for a win. And, hey, icing on the cake, the Rams have dropped 7 straight covers before they play Monday Night Football, which they will be playing next week at home against Baltimore. I think the Rams are going to be on a 3-game losing streak by the time that Baltimore game's over with next week.
Yeah, they're really suffering from the Super Bowl losers curse this year. They're just simply not playing good football. They were on that 3-game losing streak, and then they beat 2 weak sisters to supposedly get back in the winning condition, but I don't believe they are by a long shot. Chicago Bears are one of these teams that I believe we talked about this last week, about these teams that come back to the mean or back to the norm in the second half of a football season. You take a look at teams that had a season win total of more than 8 wins to begin the season. They were expected by Vegas to be a winning team, who disappointed in the first half of the season. You'll generally find these teams that reverse that tactic and come back closer to where they were supposed to be. And I expect that to be the case for the Chicago Bears, who got out to the sorrowful start to begin the football season here. And I think it starts Sunday night against the Rams, who, as you mentioned here, have all kinds of problems here. They're not yesterday's Rams. They're not the Rams we saw in the Super Bowl last year. And Jared Goff was probably the biggest expenditure of a quarterback for a long-term contract that I've seen in a long, long time. Remember, at California, he was a losing quarterback. He had a losing record. And he comes into the National Football League, and only because of Sean McVay last year did that turn around. But I think he's going back to his old ways. He's regressing to the mean as well.
Yeah, this is just not a good situation for the Rams. I don't think there's any doubt that they are missing the playoffs this year. So we always talk about the Super Bowl hangover. Well, this team definitely has it. And also, they've got injuries along the offensive line, too. And that's not going to they're not getting any healthier there this week. All right, another game we agree on the West Coast. We both like Arizona, as right now they're about an 11-point dog against San Francisco. These two teams just played a few weeks ago, and it was a pretty entertaining football game. It wasn't a blowout by any means, even though Garoppolo had 4 touchdown passes. But a few reasons I like Arizona myself in this one. If you take a look at it, they've been competitive. Even though they've lost 3 straight, they've covered 5 out of the last 6. And they had an 8-game winning streak versus San Francisco snapped when they lost a couple of weeks ago. So and they covered that game. They were in that game. So this is a series rivalry that Arizona just seems to have their number. Even when they're completely the dog, they still, as they demonstrated a couple weeks ago, they still hang with this team. Throw in the fact that San Francisco's coming off their first loss of the season, and in any sport, in any situation, when you have an extended winning streak like they did, I always like to go against the team in their very next game. So I throw in the fact it was a Monday night game. Throw in the fact it was a physical game. Throw in the fact that they were banged up guys coming out of that game and even that didn't play in the game for San Francisco. And this is a game that I'm even throwing a few bucks on the money line. I wouldn't be shocked to see an outright upset.
I wouldn't either here, and I'm with you in the game with Arizona. And you talked about playing against teams after that loss. That's called the bubble burst. We see a lot of it in college football. We're seeing two teams this week that are in bubble burst situations, the New England Patriots we just talked about, and also San Francisco in this football game. There's no tougher loss than San Francisco took coming into this Monday night off of the Monday night loss overtime against Seattle. They have a shorter week to prepare after having played an overtime football game. That's never any good. And as you mentioned here, Arizona has this team's number here. They just beat them silly when it comes to the point spread inside the series here. Then you look at Frisco themselves. My goodness, 1-8 to the number when they're coming off a Monday night football game. I don't know how Shanahan's going to get this team back up on with a positive frame of mind in this football game after that brutal loss Monday night. I like Arizona in the football game, and like you, I might tickle a money line with them as well.
All right, and by the way, San Francisco's next three opponents, Green Bay, on the road with Baltimore, on the road with the Saints. So they better get things going. And another reason why I like Arizona, to tell you the truth, Jimmy Garoppolo looked awful in that game on Monday night. And I know Arizona's not Seattle defensively, but boy, did he look bad. And if he would have played a decent football game, they would have won that game. The sack and the fumble touchdown changed everything. They were dominating that game. It looked like he had absolutely no awareness in the pocket. And I could just imagine if he was on a team like the Jets this season, how bad Jimmy Garoppolo would look.
He would almost look Mason Rudolph bad, and he's making a lot more money than Mason Rudolph is these days. So he is a highly overrated quarterback. There's no question about that. He was expected to take this team to the promised land. And I think this is another contract that San Francisco is going to regret signing this long-term deal with Jimmy G.
All right, another long shot, upset possibility. A team that we both are going to take as the dog this week is Miami. They've won 2 straight. They've covered 5 straight. They lost to Buffalo just a few weeks ago in a game that they led in the second half. Buffalo, meanwhile, and I've seen this spread go up to nearly 6.5 points actually recently. Buffalo, meanwhile, finally lost on the road to Cleveland. We know that. But I also just didn't like the way that Josh Allen played in that game either. He looked kind of erratic, and the offense really hasn't really done a lot this year. It's been the defense that's been saving Buffalo week in and week out. And it's a rivalry, a division rivalry. Miami's confidence is sky high. I could see this game going down to the wire.
I can too. A couple of concerns I do have, though. Well, number one, the Buffalo fans come down to Miami in droves.
Yeah, right.
They get away from that cold weather down here to golf a little bit. And Miami hasn't really been packing the Hard Rock Stadium this year. The seats have been sparse. So you're going to see a lot of Buffalo Bills fans in attendance here. But the bottom line here is Fitzpatrick is really giving this team a spark here of late. You have to take it while you get it.
That's
because
right.
we know his tendencies. He'll do just that for a short period of time, maybe a month or so, and then he'll go flat.
That's
he'll
right.
Be like a Coke bottle that you left open out overnight, and it's going to be completely flat sooner than later. But you get him while you got him, and right now he's playing some pretty good football here. You've got real close revenge here from a couple of weeks ago when Miami went into Buffalo, lost the game, but out-yarded the Bills. They're playing really good right now. They've covered the number 5 times in a row. They're feeling pretty good about themselves. I'm with you on Miami against Buffalo in this game.
Hey, by the way, I do like flat Pepsi.
You do.
Well,
you like cold
when I was no, I don't. Actually, when I was growing up, I don't drink Coke I don't drink soda anymore. But when I was growing up, I used to actually like waiting until like 7 days or something for my Pepsi to go flat.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a first.
I was weird growing up as far as that was concerned.
You're not a carbonation guy.
No, that's why no soda anymore.
There you
All
go.
right, so Cincinnati and Oakland, and this is a game we disagree on. I know Cincinnati might be getting a little healthier at wide receiver, but still, they've got the rookie quarterback who is going to have his struggles for a few weeks and maybe for the rest of the season. It's possible. I'm not sure Cincinnati wins a game this year, to tell you the truth. We'll see what their schedule looks like, but still, they've lost their last three by a total of 60 points. They beat Oakland last year, so Oakland may remember that. They've won two straight Oakland. They've covered three straight. I'm on the side of Oakland. I have been with Gruden this season. They're finally starting to look like the real deal. These are games they have to take advantage of. They can beat the Bengals this week. They beat the Jets next week, and all of a sudden they could be sitting there mathematically in the playoffs. I know there's some injuries to concern with the Raiders, but again, when you got a rookie quarterback, first road game, the point spread's about 10.5. I'm okay with that. I think the Raiders are going to roll in this one.
I can understand where you're coming from because if you've been on the Oakland Raiders, there's no sense of hopping off the merry-go-round right now at this time. But I haven't been with the Oakland Raiders, and I'm not about to jump on it this time when it's going 50 miles an hour either. Uh, in Cincinnati, you got a football team that obviously is in dire straits. Ryan Finley, now their quarterback, he's going to find his way somewhere between now and the end of the year. They've been out-yarded in 22 of the last 29 football games they played. The program's a total mess, and they got to change this thing around here pretty quick. But the thing that attracts me to Cincinnati is this: they're a winless team, and you find winless teams in the second half of the National Football League season. Uh, they're on the road. They are 30-13 against the spread. That's a pretty good number. And what it tells you is that the opponents oftentimes play down to their level.
And the spreads are usually really high, so they can
They're
cover
high.
those. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're packed, so you're getting value and you're getting a disinterested favorite, is basically what it all amounts to. So I'm going to take advantage of that with Cincinnati in this football game. The other side of the coin is you're not going to ever find me laying double digits with the Oakland Raiders. I go back to the Al Davis days right after he left, and they really struggled. They started to struggle as favorites, and especially laying big numbers here. This gives me my goosebumps thinking about laying Oakland minus double digits. So I'll be on Cincinnati in this game.
All right, now let's talk about some NFC South games that we both agree on, and we're both taking the dogs in this one. In these two games, the Bucks and the Falcons, they're both about the same number. Both are a 2-1 money line play. Both are getting between 5 and 6 points. I probably actually like the Bucks a little bit more, to tell you the truth, than the Falcons, but I like them both just like you do. Tampa Bay is in a much better spot as a home dog as opposed to a home favorite. They've won 5 of 9 outright and 7 of 9 covering as a home dog. They just played New Orleans pretty tough not too long ago in New Orleans. Meanwhile, Atlanta, they've beaten Carolina 3 straight up and against the spread. They have beaten Carolina 6 of 7 straight up and against the spread. They're coming off a huge win over New Orleans last week following the bye. Carolina, meanwhile, Kyle Allen hasn't exactly been lighting it up for about a month or so. Yes, they're 2-0 straight up ATS with Allen at home, but historically, or at least recently, Carolina's not the best home favorite to go with, especially a touchdown favorite. So I'm going to go ahead and take both dogs in this one. And by the way, Drew Brees better pick it up fast, because if Drew Brees shows the kind of rust that he showed last year, especially in the playoffs, I'm not so sure they won't go to Teddy Bridgewater before the season's over.
Well, that's a good point you make, and I don't think they're going to pull the pin on Breeze. I think it would probably likely happen if he got hurt again, just out of respect to him as a quarterback, where he's been and where he's going.
You're right. You're right.
Hall of Fame. But the bottom line here is he is not playing Drew Brees type football. He was sacked 6 times last week. Now, maybe that might not all be his fault, but maybe he's just not as quick on the feet as he used to be here as well either. Tampa Bay has played some pretty gritty football here of late. They're on a 5-game point spread losing streak, but a couple of those losses were brutal. I mean, down to the final possession of the football games. And you also got, I'm a little bit fearful of Jameis Winston here. He's become a human turnover machine. And Arians is trying to iron that out. I don't know if that's going to be successful or not, but I have to play the points until New Orleans gets back on track. The Atlanta Falcons, I'm with you in this game as well, and I'll draw the same parallel with them as I did the Chicago Bears. They were a team that had a season win total of 8.5 wins to begin the season. They won 1 game in the first half of the season. So we look for them to come back closer to those 8.5 wins the second half. It started with New Orleans last week. And the thing with Atlanta coming back to the norm is that they are healthy. I mean, there's not a quarterback issue here. There's not a wide receiver issue here. There's talent on this football team. They just underachieved the first half of the football season. They've got that game film, as you mentioned, on Kyle Allen. His numbers are regressing. They're falling like the temperatures up north right now. Every game, his quarterback rating is getting worse with each start. And I guarantee you that if Cam Newton were healthy, he'd be behind center in this football game. They wanted to make that change, but they just he obviously couldn't make it physically. So they're going to have to live with Kyle Allen, and that could end up hurting the Carolina Panthers by the end of the season.
Yeah, and by the way, Cam Newton, he's more than likely going to be somewhere else next year. Maybe this is a spot. Maybe Tampa Bay is a destination. I know they've already heard some rumors about Chicago, but Cam Newton's going to be somewhere next year. There's not enough good quarterbacking in the NFL, and it's unfortunate too with the injuries because the talent has gotten better, but the injuries just keep piling up for quarterbacks in the NFL. But I don't know, maybe Cam Newton. You think Cam Newton would fit with Bruce Arians, or do you think Bruce Arians is looking for a different type of quarterback?
Well, he's got somebody that doesn't fit with him in Jameis Winston, so he's trying to mold him. I don't know if he could mold Cam Newton. He's kind of like a dog that's 3 or 4 years old. You can't teach him new tricks. But there are places for Cam Newton to land in the National Football League for teams that are desperate for quarterbacks. You mentioned one, the Chicago Bears, because I think the Trubisky thing might be done by season's end here. So if Newton isn't with Carolina next year, he'll be starting in the NFL with some other team.
Before I let you go, Mark, I do want to bring up because when I was doing the show with Dave Koken earlier, the college football show, I said, all right, because I always bring up these trends during the college football show as well, and I said, all right, I got a Mark Lawrence playbook trend of the week for you, so I'm going to share it on this show. This is in the Memphis-Houston game, and actually there's correlating trends that work perfectly in this matchup, taking Memphis, that is, as a 10-point favorite. Not only has Memphis covered 8 straight games coming off a bye, including 1-0 this year, but head coach Dana Holgorsen for Houston is 0-13 against the spread all-time as a head coach coming off a bye when his team owns a sub-750 win percentage.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong number to say the least. Not good numbers for him, and you want to take it one step further.
Sure.
In this week's playbook newsletter, our incredible stat calls out the Texas A&M Aggies, who are 0-14 against the spread in games off a bye week.
Wait, and South Carolina's covered 9 straight versus SEC teams with a bye.
There you go.
How about that?
They all kind of fit like gloves. We'll see whether or not that glove, was an O.J. Simpson glove or if it fits perfectly.
Yes. Let's not go there. All right. So that's the college football, of course. You have NFL and college football. Dave's a big college football guy. If you had a preference, what would it be?
Between the two sports?
Yeah.
Well, I love college football. I mean, as a fan in my heart and so forth and whatnot, but I really have more success handicapping the National Football League, and I'll tell you why. What I've learned in the many, many, many years I've been doing this business is this, that teams in the National Football League, unlike college football teams, they are basically machines. You can put tape over the names of the teams, forget who they are and what their names are, and just look at how they're performing statistically each season long, progressing as the season wears on. You can see teams that are either hitting on all cylinders or beginning to misfire. They're just machines, and all you do is handicap how they're performing and what you can expect from those teams. So there's a lot more than I can expect or realize from the National Football League teams. College is a little bit more emotion involved in the football games, highs and lows, look ahead, so forth and whatnot. But a little bit more of a placid demeanor, if you will, for the teams in the NFL, and that makes the handicapping a little easier.
Do you have, like every year, do you have in both sports, and I know the answer to this, but do you have do you always at the end of the year, usually with like a month to go, have like a team or two that does really well for you or a team or two that doesn't?
Well, not a team particularly that I would mention or could mention. They all evolve out of what I just talked about, how they're performing on the season. So if I can find and isolate those teams that are playing a lot better on the field than that and not winning this point spreads, and I can look for them to maybe turn that around in the month of November, that's a real good thing. So look at teams statistically who are winning the yards but losing the football games to look at them in the final month of the season, again, that's that regression back to where the style of play they're doing. So I don't know who it will be, and it comes week to week to week. But there's a lot of good young sleeper teams, especially in college football. They're that way. The National Football League, again, a little bit more of a monotone machine type league. So college football, look for those teams that are playing under the
Yeah,
radar.
I always make a lot more money under my system. I have a system, not as straight up like you as a professional handicapper, but I have a system that I use, and my system makes me a lot more money in college because of the ability for big upsets in college football. So I might have 5 or 6 double-digit upset plays every week in college football. I might only like really believe in 1 or 2 of them each week, but there's 3 or 4 where I say, you know what, maybe, and all I need is one of them to hit, and then I'm maybe breaking even or making money. And in college football, every single week, there's usually at least 3 or 4 outright upsets of teams that are like 14 or 17-point dogs, and that's a big money line.
It is a big money line. I like to start with those at +7 or more because that's attractive to begin with. And if you have a 7 point dog that you think can win the game straight up, sometimes you'll get that opponent looking past them. And I think I'm just going to throw this out for an observation here, but I think Missouri's got all the chance of the makings to do that with Florida this week. Everybody's going to want to maybe fade Missouri because they're on this 3 game losing streak, but all 3 of those losses were on the road,
Mm-hmm.
and they come home, and that's a terrific number for teams that are in the role that Missouri's in this week, and they need this game like blood to go bowling. So that will be my money line surprise team in the college football this week, the Missouri
Yeah,
Tigers.
have we have the word come out yet that Missouri will be eligible for the bowl this year? I don't know if
No,
there's been
it
a
has. It hasn't officially. I know they're arguing it. They're vehemently going to appeal this, and I think they're going to appeal this all the way through to the bowls, and they'll play even though it's under appeal
okay.
because. Yeah, so the bottom line here is Barry Odom wants to go bowling. The Missouri players want to go bowling. Now, if they acquiesce and cave in, they lose this game to Florida, and then they don't become bowl eligible. They'll accept it because they wouldn't have gone to a bowl anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
so,
Yeah,
so
just go
that's
ahead
how they'll
and
play
get it
that
over
card.
with.
Right.
By the way, are you surprised before I let you go? I mean, my 5-star pick before Chase Garbers looks like he's going to return for Cal. Then I hear the news Garbers is coming back. So I get really excited, and I figure, boy, I got to rush to make sure I get this pick in before the line drops. The line hasn't dropped at all. Are you surprised by that?
No, that's the funky stuff sometimes that you see. Players are either coming back or not going to be there, and you're anticipating a line move, and it flat out simply doesn't come. And the reason it doesn't is because of the sharps in Vegas. And a lot of that is because they know that the line was made with or without that player to begin with.
Okay.
So,
So
so
they thought in the beginning of the week then that this was a possibility.
that's exactly right. And
Okay.
they thought because it was more of a probability than a possibility, it was impacted in the line when it opened up. So hence they won't move that line. So if the sharps aren't going to be betting it, moving it, it's going to take a long time for the public to get to the Californias of the college world.
Excellent job as always, Mark. How's everything else going on as far as covers and playbook?
Everything is going great. You can get all my plays at covers.com. We've got a big weekend of winners this weekend. I got a big 5-star college football game of the month. Or you can check out our newsletter online at playbook.com.
All right. I hope it's not Rutgers.
No, it is not. I can guarantee you that. Okay.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, Greg, have a great week. I'll catch you next week. Be